Good evening, I'm Jason Vio. Katerina is away tonight. This is CBC Windsor News. Thank you so much for watching. Tonight, new details about how police caught the man they say killed a 6-year-old girl here back in 1971. Plus, there's talk of building the largest battery storage project in Canada, and it's a partnership between the feds, the province, and Indigenous people. A warm winter means syrup is flowing from trees already, but will they tap out too early in the season? And a trailblazing Black architect was a key player in designing the Ambassador Bridge and the Windsor-Detroit Tunnel. We'll learn more about Cornelius Henderson coming up. And we're learning more about how police use DNA evidence to finally solve the Ljubica Topic murder. The little girl was sexually assaulted and killed back in May of 1971. 2 days ago, police released the name of the murderer, Frank Arthur Hall, which they withheld since 2019. And our Dale Molnar has been working to find out more about the process used. And Dale, apparently a distant relative of Hall's may have unknowingly linked all of this together.
Well, that's right, Jason. The technique used to link Hall's DNA to the crime scene is called investigative genetic genealogy. And it's basically the same technique used to solve the Christine Jessup murder and to find the infamous Golden State Killer. Police can be thankful that a distant cousin of Frank Arthur Hall's in Texas wanted to learn more about genealogy. That's because a genetic testing firm in California ran DNA from bodily fluids at the crime scene to look for matches in an American database. Hall's Texas cousin had also put their DNA in there to learn more about the family. The chief genetic genealogist with Parabon Nanolabs in California says they found about a dozen strong matches in the database, but she says that's just the beginning of the search.
Investigative genetic genealogy is simply a tip or a lead generator. No one's going to be arrested based on this technology or this technique. Law enforcement will take this tip just like they would if someone called in an anonymous tip to, say, Crime Stoppers, and they have to do their full investigation and decide whether the hypothesis we have developed through investigative genetic genealogy is a valid one or not. And the most important part of that investigation is they have to collect DNA directly from that person of interest and compare it against their court-admissible genetic profile.
Once a strong match was found, the California firm and Windsor police were able to narrow the search down to Hall's grandparents. Police then used search warrants to obtain DNA samples from family members.
At that point, we decide, okay, we have to start obtaining DNA samples lawfully from these individuals, whether they're alive or deceased, and send it to Center for Forensic Science for them to make the comparison and determine whether or not that could be the same profile.
Chapman says they got a search warrant to obtain DNA from a tissue sample of Hall's that was in a lab. Moore credits investigators at the time of the incident for collecting good samples that held up over time. She says it's more difficult to solve crimes like this in Canada because our privacy laws make it more difficult to find out information on people. She says this matching only took weeks back in 2019. That's when police announced they solved the case, but didn't release the name at the time. They said Hall was dead and couldn't defend himself in court. But today, Chapman says the technique was so new, they weren't sure if they could legally release Hall's name.
We know that since then, Toronto police has had 2 cases solved in similar manner as ours, and they chose to release the name. And so that the constellation of facts that our administration now we're dealing with allowed for reassessment and to be a little more transparent and put it forward.
Chapman says Hall had prior arrests for minor thefts and property crimes in Windsor, but he was never considered a suspect in Topic's murder. He says Hall was quite transient, but did have an address down the road from where the 6-year-old lived. Chapman did say through the 70s and 80s, Hall made trips back to Ontario. Chapman says Hall's DNA has been in a DNA index database in Canada since the 1990s, and it is not matched with any other crimes. But he says Windsor police will continue to work with Edmonton police, where Hall last lived, to see if any other victims come forward.
So I'm interested to see what happens when this information gets out and whether we get some credible tips coming in, whether it's in Windsor, in Edmonton, or anywhere else.
Now, Chapman just returned from Edmonton yesterday. He was there to tell the family of Frank Hall that Hall killed Ljubica Topic. He says they were shocked and it rocked their world, but he says considering the bombshell, they took it quite well. He says they too have been victimized by this awful crime. Chapman confirmed today that the Topic family was told the name of the man who killed their daughter back in 2019. Jason?
Thanks so much, Dale. The CBC's Dale Molnar reporting live tonight. All week, we've been taking you to Syria and Turkey, checking in on the aftermath of that deadly earthquake. Tomorrow night, the Windsor Islamic Association is hosting a fundraising event. It will take place after the evening prayer. Their goal is to raise $200,000 to help those in the hardest hit areas. More than 20,000 people have died, and many of those who survived no longer have safe shelter. All of this as the winter cold creeps in. 4 days later, search crews continue to find survivors, and the latest rescue came earlier today in one city southeast of Turkey. A woman was pulled alive from the rubble of a destroyed building with Canadian help. The CBC's Briar Stewart has this report from the scene.
They've asked us for some of assistance with our search cam because we see that now they're going across and down.
It really is remarkable when you think about how many days it's been and the fact that there is a woman trapped in there and rescuers have made contact with her. We understand that they've given her food and water, but in terms of actually extracting her from the building, it's very difficult and precarious work. They brought her out, and it's hard to see because they're actually kind of huddled over her. She's on the ground on the stretcher and doing some, kind of basic stabilization. We know, oh, here she comes down here. Again, just an incredible moment. This happened Monday. She's been in that building for days, freezing cold. She could hear rescuers obviously trying to get to her, and now she has been freed. The latest survivor of this earthquake. Really just a miraculous thing to see. How does it feel to bring her out?
I am happy. We are happy.
You've been here now for a number of hours watching this unfold. What is it like to finally see the moment of her coming out?
Oh, it's incredible. It's such a rare event that you actually have somebody that can survive these conditions, and the team effort here was really something else to really take out the person who was trapped there. So it's something else.
They grabbed her from underneath, right?
Yes.
Can you kind of take us through that process?
From what I do know is they did try to set up all that shoring to gain access, make it as safe as possible for them, and then we were assisting them with many of our tools so they can get through a lot of the material there to get access to her.
Thank you very much, and good work here.
Thank you very much. Meet you, photography. Yeah.
Great job, great job.
Photo. Great job.
But we'll see that here. They want to get a photo with the Canadians that have come to help them.
Thank you. Let's go get another one. Canadian. Go get another one.
That man shaking the hand of our police chief, it's Abdullah E. Farah. He's a taxi driver in Amherstburg who stopped a scam dead in its tracks. Police call it the grandparents scam, and it's not the first time he's helped stop one. Earlier this month, an 86-year-old passenger got into Farah's taxi. She was heading to a bank, but Farah said she was shaking and that something seemed off. It turns out his passenger was in the middle of being scammed. A fake caller told the woman her grandson was in jail and needed cash. After hearing that, Farah called police, who helped the woman connect with her grandson. Police say he saved her thousands of dollars. Farah actually stopped this scam before, but says he's no hero, telling CBC, quote, "If you have a big heart, don't second guess yourself, just try to help." And in less than an hour, a diverse panel of speakers will talk about the importance of representation in public governance across Windsor-Essex. The discussion was prompted in part by CBC's coverage of the all-white police board. There's been criticism that a racially diverse person with experience on this issue should have been appointed instead. One of the reasons, there's been a problematic relationship between police and people of color, as well as Indigenous people. The panel is called Crucial Voices: The Importance of Representation in Public Institutional Leadership.
One of the things that I recognize, and I think a lot of people recognize, is that there's a real hunger for the community to not only just be represented, but to have a greater say in how their community gets better. And one of the disappointing news about when we find out that our government public agencies don't reflect our communities is that people feel that they're shut out of the conversation.
The recent conversation around the Police Services Board in Windsor was one mandate to action, right? When we think about what does it look like when some people are just not relevant, and how is that so dangerous for the way that people are raised and the way that people live their day-to-day lives in a particular democratic space. It's really forced a conversation. There's been so much outreach. And as we think through at the university, this is our scholarship, this is our teaching, this is our research, and we're experts. How can we be part of this conversation to facilitate for our students?
One of the ways that I sometimes think about this is a question of fairness. Is this fair? And why are we, if it's not fair, what are we doing to address the unfairness of that system?
And we need to be talking about it in real life and holding our leaders accountable for having us among them.
The panel discussion is taking place tonight from 7 until 9. That's located at the School of Creative Arts Armories building in downtown Windsor. It will also be streamed live online. You can find that link on our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. Premier Doug Ford is responding to questions about developers attending a fundraising event for his daughter's wedding. Ford says the developers were family friends and insists nothing unethical happened. Mike Crawley has those details.
Premier Doug Ford posted about his daughter's wedding to his official Facebook account and his official Instagram account.
It's really personal, and this is my daughter's wedding.
As first reported by Global News, some developers attended what's called a stag and doe, a pre-wedding event where invited guests are asked to donate cash to the couple. Ford did not tell Ontario's Integrity Commissioner about the event until 5 months after it happened, only after a reporter started looking into it.
That's the first time that's ever come out in Canadian history, someone asking about someone's daughter's wedding. But anyways, it's cleared with the Integrity Commissioner.
The information Ford provided the Integrity Commissioner, that the developers who attended are friends of the family, in some cases for decades. Ford also told the ethics watchdog that he had no knowledge of gifts given to the couple and that no government business was discussed at the event.
He cleared it 1,000%, not 999, 1,000%.
That didn't stop the questions, including who exactly were these developer friends?
Wow, you know something? Okay, so I know hundreds of developers. I know hundreds of private sector folks.
Why did Ford wait so long to tell the Integrity Commissioner?
This is something very private and personal to our family.
And as the questions persisted?
I have 2 more weddings coming up too, so we'll give you the list after that too. It's ridiculous. This is ridiculous, to be frank with you.
The Premier's explanation just doesn't pass the smell test, especially given all the controversy around these Greenbelt land deals that are going to benefit a handful of land speculators financially in such an extreme way.
Last fall, the Ford government gave the owners of 15 Greenbelt properties the go-ahead to develop homes. This came despite Ford's promising repeatedly since 2018 that he would not touch the Greenbelt. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Farmers across Ontario are in a sticky situation. They're trying to decide when to tap maple trees to start the syrup run. The weather is turning this season into a bit of a gamble. Warmer temperatures help the sap run from the trees, but without a cold blast in the next weeks, the trees will bud and the sap runs out. A farmer in Lakeshore has placed his bet, tapping trees earlier than ever before. So far, he says it's paying off.
This heat, although we're tapped early, is very scary for us. The drought all summer, we don't know how much water we got in the bush this year in the roots of the trees, which is key to maple's existence. They're all going to have sap in them. How much are they going to come out? We don't really know. We're hoping for a deep freeze coming up next week. It's looking like it. And if it does, and I think what's going to happen is we're going to have sap running all through the month of February and definitely for 2, maybe 3 weeks in March, which would be incredible for us. We usually get a 5-week season. We're hoping to get 6 or 7 this year. If this was any indication, if it stays like this, come and have a look. These trees were tapped at 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. You can see that. Every single one is overloading, which is out of this world for this time of year. We traditionally tap on February 14th or 15th. The last 3 years have been that. It's obvious that things are changing with the weather and it's going to affect us, and it is affecting us. We're trying to get ahead of that loop and catch the first sap run now, even if it doesn't stay cold for the next few days. The trees shouldn't be budding. I wouldn't think so early. There's always a possibility, and if that is, not so good for us. If it stays too warm and you don't have that shock, all of a sudden the trees start budding, and once the trees bud, the sap is no longer any good. It just doesn't have the sweetness. Pure maple water should look like this. When it starts to get cloudy, it has an acrid taste, and it's no good for maple producers anymore. And that's when you know when we end the season. I wouldn't even mind a polar vortex. I know everybody hates hearing that word, but for us, we have to have that cold. If you don't have -5, we're not going to have the shock we need to get that sap running up and down that tree. The tree needs that for the leaves. The warmth, we get it. The sap is going to go up to feed those leaves, and then it's going to come back down and settle back down in the roots, and then the roots gets cold at night. And when we get that heat, up it goes again, and that's when we collect the sap. So if we don't have that intermittent -5, +5 in those ranges, we're not going to have the sap flows that we need. So yes, a deep freeze would be very welcome right now.
Still to come here on CBC Windsor News, double-digit temps on the horizon. Your full weather forecast is coming up next, and a look at a new energy storage project in Ontario. And Sophia Kambalia joins us now for a look at weather. Sophia, it's really looking like a pretty nice weekend.
Yeah, sunshine and then some. We will rebound, and actually it has been quite mild. And here's the spoiler alert: it is going to be super mild, like April-like temperatures for this upcoming week ahead. First of all, though, you can see that southerly moisture, that area of high pressure has really pushed away any of that cold air mass. In fact, yesterday, those of you in Windsor hit 14. Normal seasonal temperature this time of year should be right at the freezing mark, 0 degrees. It is why we have no snow on the ground right now. Not a great winter, as you know, for the kids that want to toboggan, build the snowman, or even have the backyard rink. We've had a ton of rain, though. Yesterday, one of the 2 rainiest days so far in 2023. It has also been very windy. You were one of the gustiest places in southern Ontario yesterday in Windsor. 78-kilometer-an-hour gust came through. Still a little bit breezy from the northwest, though, into Saturday, rather Friday evening into Saturday, which is why we have just a slight wind chill going on. You will feel like -6 throughout this evening hours and a little bit colder, almost into the double digits for your overnight period. But that warm air will really win out the battle and make its presence known for this upcoming week ahead. Here's how it all shakes out Saturday and into next week. Plenty of sunshine across the board for your Saturday. You are about 3 degrees above the seasonal average for this time of year. Even warmer into Sunday. Peaks of sun continue. 8 degrees. Watch Monday because you keep the warmth, but a little bit of active weather pushes itself in. It'll make itself known for this upcoming week ahead with this boundary setting up that will bring us Gulf moisture, but also a 1-2 punch with a few consecutive systems that will bring, yes, more rain, but also, ready for this, a ton of mild conditions. April-like temperatures to finish off midweek and into next weekend. We're talking 15 and maybe even more. Still a long ways out, but expect rain and warmth for this upcoming week ahead.
That's some great stuff. I can't believe I'm seeing 15 on that.
I know. I gotta say though, I need some snow, and we need to get out and do some tobogganing and enjoy the good things about winter as well. But this is April right across the board. Might even have an early start to the maple syrup season as well.
All right, thanks so much. Still to come here on CBC Windsor News, as Black History Month continues, we learn more about Cornelius Henderson. He helped design both the Ambassador Bridge and the Windsor-Detroit Tunnel. That story is next. With a cash injection from the province and the federal government, a new energy storage facility will be built south of Brantford. It's seen as a greener option and is being built in partnership with an Indigenous community. Lorenda Redekop reports.
This energy storage project brings together the federal and provincial governments, an Indigenous community, as well as businesses.
We are building the largest battery storage project in Canada and one of the largest in the whole world.
So this is a large grid-scale battery.
Here's an example of battery power storage in Nova Scotia. This would be much bigger, to store 250 megawatts of electricity. One challenge for clean energy sources is storing them. Since the sun isn't always shining for solar energy, the wind isn't always blowing. This is seen as a solution.
It will more than double our province's energy storage resources and will provide enough electricity to power a city approximately the size of Oshawa.
The federal government is adding another $50 million to this project and sees this as part of reconciliation, partnering with an Indigenous community.
We have an original sin, and reconciliation is the path forward. And I absolutely believe that Indigenous prosperity built through projects like this one is an essential part.
We're not just an investor, we're actually a developer, an investor, and a constructor. And I think that signals our part of what we're doing for a more sustainable future, and it will lead us to achieving our goal of economic self-sufficiency.
It's at a time when electrification is increasing, including for vehicles.
This is an exciting announcement. This is a big project.
But this environmentalist says it could be much better. The Ford government canceled many green energy projects when it first came to power.
Unfortunately, these batteries, if plans don't change, these batteries are really probably going to be saving power that was generated using fossil fuels. And so they're not contributing to the cleaning of the grid. They really should be paired with more wind and solar instead.
The battery storage facility is set to be online sometime in 2025. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Here's a man who helped shape our skyline. Cornelius L Henderson, an engineer who people on both sides of the border agree needs more recognition. In the 1880s, Henderson was born in Detroit and raised by people who valued post-secondary education. Years later, he went to the University of Michigan. White classmates isolated Henderson because of his race, and he still managed to graduate in 1911. At the time, he was the second black man to receive a civil engineering degree, but he couldn't find a job until he crossed the border here into Windsor. The Canadian Bridge Company hired Henderson, and he worked there for 47 years. So what did Henderson do? He helped design the Ambassador Bridge and the Windsor-Detroit Tunnel. Both of those projects were built in the 1920s. Henderson designed the steel trusses that make up the Canadian approach on the bridge, and it's his steel tubes that the Windsor-Detroit Tunnel sits on. Researchers say more needs to be done to honor Henderson's achievements.
The Essex County Black Historical Research Society has been partnering with the Detroit Historical Society and specifically the Detroit Black Historic Sites Committee to try to get some designation and recognition for Cornelius Langston Henderson on both sides of the border. It would be so nice if that could happen simultaneously because he is a figure whose legacy spans both sides of the border. The theme for Black History Month this year is Ours to Tell, which focuses on stories of trailblazers and people who created massive change in whatever their walk of life was. And it's really important that not only during Black History Month, but all year round, we focus on the achievements and accomplishments and positive examples of people who excelled in all kinds of fields. Science, technology, engineering, and math are certainly part of these stories, and we want to make sure that kids of all backgrounds see their potential in every field of endeavor.
Now, Henderson has also had a hand in building some major factories for automotive companies. You can read much more on all of this on our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. That's it for us here at CBC Windsor News Live at 6. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, we're on social media as well. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Have a great night and a great weekend.